Hello and welcome to today's webinar, A Successful Guide to Citizen Development. This special webinar event is brought to you in partnership with ServiceNow. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about the event. My name is David Davis and I'll be serving as the moderator. As always, we want this to be educational and we encourage your questions. We'll be doing a Q&A session at the end of the event, and the experts from ServiceNow will be doing their best to answer your questions electronically during the event as well. So keep your questions coming, and we even have a best question prize, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. We also have a number of handouts available for download there in your audience console. You'll find a PDF resource on the benefits of citizen development that you can download, and also the Launch and Scale Citizen Development on the Now Platform Success Workbook. So make sure that you check out those resources, download those before you go. At the end of the webinar, I'll be announcing the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card door prize. If you're watching this on demand, of course, the drawing has already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found in the Handouts tab. And as I mentioned, we also have a Best Question prize for an additional $50 Amazon gift card. Prize winners will be selected and contacted via email after the event. All right, so with that, it's now time to introduce you to today's expert presenters. Welcome, Mr. Mark Tognetti, Director for Platform Outbound Product Management, and Cassidy Gray, Senior Product Marketing Specialist, both from ServiceNow. I'll now turn it over to Cassidy to get the conversation going. Take it away, Cassidy.
Welcome to today's webinar, A Guide to Successful Citizen Development. I know we have a lot of people with us today, so who is ready to learn how to jumpstart their low-code journey? We're all nodding our heads, so I'm going to take that as a yes. My name is Cassidy Gray, and I'm the Senior Product Marketing Specialist for ServiceNow's App Engine. I've been with ServiceNow going on 4 years now, and today I market our fabulous low-code application platform product. I'm passionate about my role because App Engine enables anyone to build low-code apps quickly, which cultivates innovation across the enterprise. I am delighted to be joined by my friend and colleague, Mark Tognetti. Mark, for those who don't know you, do you want to share a few words about yourself and your background?
Sure, Cassidy, and good morning, by the way. So hey, everybody, Mark Tognetti. So I'm Director of Creator Workflows Outbound Product Management. I just crossed my 30-year anniversary in enterprise IT. I've been both a practitioner and a consultant in the last 3 years with ServiceNow. I've been doing this long enough that I remember when citizen development was called Lotus Notes. My team basically works with our top customers around best practices and adopting our low-code tools, as well as citizen development programs, citizen development models. So I'm super excited to share what we've learned from those customers and answer your questions at the end of this.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. I know our audience is excited to get started, so here is the agenda. So we're going to kick off the presentation with a demo showing you what a low-code tool looks like. After the demo, we'll outline exactly what can be achieved with low-code, setting the groundwork for the discussion on citizen development. From there, Mark will jump right into presenting our guide to successful citizen development and then detail how to get started. And lastly, we'll close out the presentation with some Q&A. Does that sound good? So in a moment, you'll be introduced to a new groundbreaking low-code tool, App Engine Studio. In the short demo, our colleague Tom Freeman gives context for low-code and showcases what App Engine Studio can do. Tom is the Senior Technical Product Marketing Manager of Creator Workflows, so you are in for a treat. Here is the demo.
Businesses today are faced with unrelenting pressure to quickly adapt to changing market conditions and respond to unanticipated situations while simultaneously addressing internal process challenges. These needs put a great deal of strain on IT teams responsible for the creation and maintenance of applications that support the business. It's no longer feasible to engage technical experts for every app project. Development needs to be a team sport. We have to empower individuals of all skill levels, especially non-technical subject matter experts, with the ability to drive digital transformation. App Engine Studio makes this a reality, providing a platform through which creators of any skill level can rapidly build high-quality, potentially mission-critical apps with ease. By simply clicking Create App on the homepage, we're soon presented with the building blocks of our app, 4 steps focused on data, experience, automation, and security. Once in the app dashboard, App Engine Studio guides you through these steps in greater detail. We've also provided a number of templates that can be used as is or customized to fit your needs. Leveraging one of these templates can give you a ServiceNow quality application with just a few clicks, or serve as inspiration for your next custom app. Take, for example, the emergency alert template. We can open up the template and get an idea of what the app does and see just how it works. Once deployed, we can easily see the depth of tooling seamlessly integrated into App Engine Studio, such as our new Table Designer, Flow Designer with Integration Hub, and UI Builder. These tools not only provide creators everything they need to bring to life a world-class app, they serve as a platform through which citizen developers can co-author apps with pro developers, allowing low coders to focus on business outcomes while pro devs enhance the app with sophisticated automation and user experience tweaks. With our app nearly ready to go live, App Engine Studio also serves as the conduit through which creators can coordinate with IT to ensure apps meet quality and compliance standards. As you can see, it's never been a better time to be a creator. With App Engine Studio, we make it easy for anyone to harness the power of the Now platform and quickly bring apps to life.
Great. So I hope everybody enjoyed the demo. I know everybody loves demos. Tom covered several concepts and emphasized that companies must move faster than ever to accelerate application development, as well as really how low code can help with this. This leads us to what we call the low-code promise. With low-code application development, organizations can achieve faster innovation across the enterprise, more satisfied users, and the ability to grow at a greater scale. So what do we mean when we say faster innovation? With low code, organizations can build apps in days and weeks rather than months. Also, less code means that there are more builders. This frees pro developers from low priority tasks, as Tom said, such as maintaining existing systems, so they can focus on specialized projects and innovate at scale. In addition to accelerating innovation, low code can increase user satisfaction. Organizations are able to better anticipate and meet customer and employee needs, and they're able to build rich, consumer-easy apps with consistent experiences. Now, for the third low-code promise we're highlighting today, greater scale. With low-code application delivery or low-code application development, organizations can drive higher efficiency with streamlined app delivery end-to-end and better manage risk with complete visibility and centralized guardrails of all app development on the platform. So to recap, this is a lot, but this is the low-code promise: faster innovation, more satisfied users, and greater scale. And as shown in the demo earlier, App Engine Studio delivers this low-code promise. Developers of any skill level can build as individuals or in teams, all on a single low-code application platform with App Engine. While we're going to cover citizen development in particular, thanks to Mark, App Engine makes it easy for any level of developer to build apps fast with 3 key areas of any application: workflows and integrations, user experiences, and native platform intelligence, as you see. We're able to scale application delivery in a way that was never possible until now with low code. With more users building low code apps with App Engine, organizations are digitally transforming their enterprise and accelerating business value like we have never seen before. So you may be thinking, this is great, but what types of low code apps can be built and have been built with App Engine? Well, these are just a few examples. Low-code apps enhance every department, as, again, you see. Look at this circle. From HR to operations to supply chain, the scope and scale of low-code apps built with App Engine is growing. So let's take a closer look at a few examples. One example, within HR, a financial services customer created an app for their annual employee transfer process. With the app, there's now a better employee experience for researching and applying to new roles, and it gives HR full visibility into the application process from start to finish. Within the travel and expense department, a customer built an employee car booking and reimbursement application. The app replaced a 12-year-old email-driven process, which was time-consuming for employees and prone to errors, as I'm sure you can imagine. The new app provides a mobile-friendly, self-service process that handles 300% more car booking and reimbursement requests, with a resulting 60% gain in efficiency. As a final example, in the operations department, a claims management portal application was deployed by a customer. Today, the insurance company can process claims in hours rather than days, all on a single platform. This is exciting. I wonder if you guys would like these apps in your business, because these apps and many more are what's possible when organizations utilize low-code application development with App Engine.
All right. So I think I mentioned earlier that my team works with our top customers around best practices and enablement around both our low-code tools, our pro-code tools, and citizen distributed development type models. So we've probably interacted with over 50 customers to varying degrees over the last 18 months or so. And so the next little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've learned, both the pitfalls we've seen in the low-code journey, programs that have been less than successful, and talk a little bit about what the common themes associated with the most successful programs that we've seen. So from a common pitfall perspective, interestingly enough, one of the ones is disparity of platform. And by platform, I mean is having many or more than 3 generally, or more than 2 really, low-code platforms. The challenge when you sort of distribute the capability across that many platforms is you're going to end up building more custom integrations, right? Because almost everything, like most of Cassidy's examples, whether it's HR or travel, connected back to some sort of legacy system. If you're doing that across 4 or 5 different platforms, you're replicating that integration 4 or 5 times, right? So a lot more custom integration the more platforms you have. More technical debt. I mean, that sort of goes by default. You now have multiple platforms that you have to worry about the technical debt. But the one thing that sometimes people miss when they don't, or at least they're not thinking about it when it comes to low-code platforms, if you're on a common platform, right, you have that ability to have a common data model and leverage that across the different applications. So again, some of the more challenged programs that we've worked with have the challenge of having really too much choice, too many platforms. The second is siloed behavior, and this to some extent relates to disparate platforms, but this is more about even if you're on a common low-code platform, everybody kind of goes and does their own thing. And the problem with that siloed organizational behavior is you're going to get a lot less reuse, and that's going to cause a lot more waste in terms of not being able to leverage capabilities that are created. Second is it makes your investment unpredictable. And ultimately, operating in a siloed model is going to reduce your overall ROI for your low-code investment. And then the last piece is lack of governance, right? So not having a governance model in place for your low-code platform, or what we've seen from some of our customers, can absolutely lead to app sprawl that impacts technical debt, that impacts the supportability of what's being built. Secondly, there's no guardrails, right? You have limited visibility in terms of what developers are building, and again, that makes the ongoing support of the platform as a whole and those individual applications challenging. And last but certainly not least, lack of governance can lead to risk, right? Risk to your intellectual property, risk to regulatory or internal audit types of compliance. So these 3 pitfalls: disparate platform, siloed behavior, lack of governance, we usually see 2 or more of them in the programs that have been less than successful. So how do you address this, right? So how do you ensure that you can achieve low-code success and then make sure that you don't stumble into those pitfalls of governance, disparate platforms, or siloed behavior? So we believe the answer to that, and what we've seen with our customers, is a citizen development program, right? The benefit of citizen development program is not only that it provides that structure, that governance, that model that addresses those pitfalls, but it has the added benefit, as you saw in the demo and Cassie spoke a little bit about, is of potentially vastly expanding your pool of developers, right? We all, ServiceNow included, we're all competing for the same small population of professional developers, right? The part of the power and the beauty of a low-code solution is I can turn, in theory, almost anybody into a developer. So I have the potential to putting a citizen development program in place, making sure we address these pitfalls, right? but at the same time expanding our pool of development resources and really empowering, our lines of business to build the applications that they need to move forward. Two quick definitions before we jump into what we're seeing in terms of common themes around successful citizen programs. So Cassie already talked a bit about this, but what's the power of low-code development? It is that any individual with any level of coding experience can build apps fast using these tools. And then the second is who are citizen developers? And I can tell you that as those 50 plus customers we've talked to, the definitions can vary pretty greatly in terms of what a citizen developer is. But just to provide a base level definition, it is a user with any level of coding experience who has a distinct knowledge of their business process, right? And the technical curiosity about how to build an app, right? So one of the things we look for in citizen developers or the best practices are folks that have the aptitude, if you will, and the attitude to be good citizen developers. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So common themes that we've seen across 50 plus customers that have successful citizen development programs. So there's three themes that I consider sort of foundational elements of success, and then three key decision areas that these customers have thought through, have addressed, as appropriate to their organization. So from a foundational element of success, they've adopted, obviously, a low-code application platform. And citizen development is very difficult to do from a pro-code model. And as I mentioned earlier, they've adopted one or maybe two, but they're generally not trying to do this with 3, 4, or 5. Right? So they've got that foundation in place. They understand the platform. The second is that they understand and embrace the fact that a citizen development program is a journey, right? They start small, they start focused, and we'll talk about that in a minute in the guide. They get the process right, they get the guardrails right, they get the materials right? They get some quick wins and successes, and then they build on those, and they expand in a stepped manner out into other areas of the business. So embracing the journey, understanding it's a journey, I think is a key foundational element of success. How long that journey is going to vary from customer to customer or company to company. And we'll have a couple examples. We'll talk about one that's relatively quick and one that, has done something over the course of a couple of years. And then the third piece is the most successful programs, market their success. I can say as I mentioned, long time in enterprise IT folks generally were terrible at marketing and were uncomfortable about talking about the good stuff that we do. But a citizen development program, it's important, right, that the business understand the value that they're bringing, the quick wins that this program is getting, and that you market that success so people are aware of it. So those three foundational elements of success. From a key decision area, again, three key decision areas that the most successful programs have thought through, put something in place, adjusted it over time. The first is selecting the right use cases for citizen development. So not every application, every process is appropriate for a citizen developer to build, right? So it's important to have that right set of guidance, the right set of filters and criteria. So when somebody comes with an idea, you can make a determination if it makes sense for a citizen developer to build it. And then the second related to this is, selecting the right citizen developers. Not every individual is necessarily the right individual to be a citizen developer. And it goes back to the comment I made a minute ago, which is they need to have the right aptitude, right? They need to be comfortable with technology, not necessarily developers. They need to understand and be curious about learning technology and applying it to make their business better. But they also need the right attitude, right? They need to understand that being a citizen developer is not the opportunity to go rogue. It is not shadow IT. It is a partnership with whatever the core governing body is for the citizen development program, right? They need to adhere to, comply with corporate standards. They need to work with the centralized team versus, in isolation from the centralized team. The second key decision area that our customers, the most successful programs have thought through is enabling and really empowering the citizen developer. So from an enablement perspective, it is about having the right training in place to train them on the low-code platform that you've chosen. And that training needs to be appropriate, and it needs to be incremental to the citizen developer. So the wrong answer is 4 weeks of intensive training to get them to learn the platform. Arguably that wouldn't be low code, but it's about how can they consume the training in digestible chunks. And as they consume that training, as they earn their certifications associated with that training, then they get increasing access to the platform, increasing ability to use different capabilities. So that training plus testing equates to access is absolutely one of the best practices that we see. And then from an empowerment perspective, it's very important that even now that they're enabled and they can build applications, what's the support mechanism that you have in place? The very best programs have support mechanisms that are scalable, right? So it is office hours on a weekly basis, or maybe twice a week, where all the citizen developers can come and ask their questions of one of the core team members or one of the professional developers, and everybody has the benefit of learning, from those office hours. Best practices are to record the office hours, save those recordings where people can access them, index them lightly, so at 15 minutes in we talked about workflows or something like that. But it needs to be a scalable model, because we've certainly seen some customers that have tried to sort of map citizen developers to specific pro developers, and it just doesn't scale. It can become very quickly overwhelming sort of for that core team. The other key aspect of empowering the citizen developers is give them a community. Give them it doesn't matter what it is, right? It can be Slack, it can be Teams, whatever your collaboration tool is of choice, but give them a community where they can ask questions, right? And that is monitored and moderated, right, by the professional developer team. My team is in the process of helping stand up sort of this enablement activity with a very large food processor today. And the interesting thing is we've been doing it now for about 3 months, and we're starting to see the citizen developers be able to support each other. Again, with the oversight of sort of the core team. And I guess the last piece in terms of enabling the developer is, make sure that you're providing them with the standards they need to be adhered to, but in a way that is consumable by a citizen developer. Don't hand them the 50-page manual of IT standards. Just educate them on the things that they need to understand, and curate the information sources that you want them to use, right? Because they're going to go out there and Google stuff, and they're going to get right answers and wrong answers and whatnot, but point them to where, the sort of your curated information associated with the citizen developer. And then from a guardrails perspective, this is really about, answering the questions around how am I going to protect the platform from the developer and the developers from each other? And this will be a combination of technical guardrails, right? Controls in your low-code platform, as well as operational guardrails, right? That might be associated with how are you moving an application from the dev environment to a test environment to a production environment, and how can I automate that? Guardrails done well are almost invisible to the citizen developer, right? They really are about it just doesn't get in the way of them doing their work. It's really more about making it more efficient for them to do their work. And to an extent, it shields the citizen developer from having to understand the application development process and the things that, professional developers and IT professionals worry about. To some extent, limit their need to really understand that. So these are the 6 sort of themes that we've seen in working, in working with customers with successful citizen development programs. So we've taken the pitfalls, and we've created a citizen development reference playbook. And we sort of see three phases, if you will, to establish a citizen development program. First is introducing low code into the organization, right? And and we'll talk about this in a minute. Our friends at Click, one of our customers, is a great example of they've very successfully introduced low code into the organization, but that low code is primarily being used by a core team of developers, right? The second phase is really building your maturity, right? This is part of that journey process, right? Building your maturity on that low code platform, expanding its use. And again, we'll talk about Owens, Illinois. I mean, they're a great example of a customer of ours that has achieved really low code maturity, and the majority of their development is being done on a low code platform. And then the third piece is really formalizing that citizen developer program. And in that case, we're going to talk a bit about our friends at Jabil, another customer of ours that they've done a great job of putting in place a formal citizen development program. They've actually done it quite quickly, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So what I'm going to do now is kind of delve a bit deeper into each of these three phases. So introducing low code into the organization. Again, it's about starting small with a focused low code initiative. It's about picking, as we've talked about, the right low code application platform. Training that core team of developers, right? Getting that foundational understanding of how the platform works, its best practices, what you can do with it, what's it a good fit for, what it's not, and enabling more developers. And then starting to build out, your competence on the platform, right? Including probably testing, sort of what we call that line of business IT model. So starting to reach out maybe to one or two or a few developers outside of the core team, right? To see their ability to adopt the low code platform. And then it's really key. Build one or more ready to use apps, right? You really do want to get some of those quick wins very, very, very early in the program. And I mentioned Click. So Click, as I mentioned a minute ago, basically has a core team of developers who have embraced low code, our low code tools, right? App Engine and App Engine Studio. And they've built 26 applications so far, largely for operational support. So these custom applications have, achieved real business value in terms of, 30% time savings. And at any given time, they've got about 3 applications under development. And their dev team is 5 or 6 people, right? Again, mostly in a core group. So they've introduced low code into their world. They're understanding low code. They're developing their standards. And, they are really right on the verge of being able to scale out into a more mature model and then ultimately into a full-on citizen development program. My speculation is they're probably a year or so away from doing that. So phase 2, building low code maturity on the platform, right? So it's really about initiating those plans for a successful citizen development program. So again, key aspect, you tested it a little bit in phase 1, but now let's start expanding low code outside of IT or whatever core team owns the platform. So go find line of business leads that with unique business needs or where there's a lack of automation for their processes, or they're operating their business on Excel spreadsheets, right? Go find them, go see if this is something that's interesting to them. Work with those teams to educate them on what you can build on the low code platform to start building that relationship, to start expanding outside of the IT organization. And then establish, once you've got a line of business, right, area to build in, establish what Gartner likes to call a business IT fusion team, which is a fancy way basically of saying it's a collaborative team, the core pro developers along with the business folks, right, working together to build these applications. You're going to want the right set of program stakeholders. You're going to want to define the business outcomes associated with this. Because I think one of the key lessons learned that we haven't talked about is if you're going to go down the road of low code, if you're going to go down the road of citizen development, it's important to understand what's the business outcome you're expecting, right? And we'll talk at the end a little bit about the right kind of metrics that you should use to measure success. And then use this opportunity as you build maturity to outline the program best practices, right? So, figure out who your model participants are for this. Start to continue to expand on things that are a best fit use case for your low code platform, both from a technical perspective and, as I mentioned earlier, from a citizen developer perspective. It's completely common, and in a lot of cases, many of our customers, a citizen developer will start an application, a professional developer may help them, right? Or a citizen developer may build an application, but a professional developer has built the integrations to legacy systems that the citizen developer will consume, if you will, in their application. So a great example of a customer that has achieved what I would call low code maturity is Owens, Illinois. If you don't know Owens, Illinois, I think they're the largest bottle manufacturer in the world. If not, they're awfully close. So if you enjoy the occasional beer, the bottle has likely been made by Owens, Illinois. But more importantly and more relevant to what we're talking about is, they have built hundreds of low-code applications, right? And they are 10x faster in terms of responding to the business needs. And they are, delivering, complete applications primarily out of a centralized team, but with some line of business developers in 2 weeks or less, depending on the complexity of the application. Now, I will tell you, part of what drove Owens, Illinois to this sort of scale and to adopt it very quickly is they had a Lotus Notes replacement that they needed to get accomplished. So, a decent percentage of these hundreds of applications are Lotus Notes applications that have been moved over onto the ServiceNow platform. But a great example of maturity, and where Owens, Illinois is going to go, they're going to get into that phase 3 where they start empowering folks out in the business to build their own applications. And that'll probably, again, happen in the next 6 to 9 months or so. And then phase 3, right? It's formalizing your citizen development program, right? Creating that governance and operating model for support. And as I mentioned earlier, to, protect the platform from the developers, protect the developers from each other. So the first piece of that is, is you've built the plan, you've started to put guardrails in place that just, support the core ServiceNow or the core low-code development team. All right, but now it's really time to formalize those guardrails, to establish the guardrails, your technical process, right, as well as instituting and sort of standardizing the responsibilities of the citizen developers, right? What do you expect them to do? Hopefully appropriate to a citizen developer, not a professional developer. Because I think that's the thing that we need to keep in mind is these are citizen developers. They're not professional developers. If they're not necessarily schooled or skilled, right, in some of the things that we deal with, like source control and DevOps and things like that. That means nothing to them. What they want to be able to do is automate a process to build their application to deliver business value. So it is key to think about having guardrails and governance that is appropriate to a citizen developer. You're going to want to expand the program, right? So enable and empower more citizen developers, right? Set them up to, as we mentioned earlier, one of the best practices with the right training program, with the right support program, right? Foster that citizen developer community we talked about. Get those quick wins and celebrate those quick wins, right? My observation is nothing succeeds like success with one of these programs. And it really can be a relatively simple and basic application, but the fact that it was built by a citizen developer, the fact that a line of business built an application on their own is a very, very powerful statement today. And it really is where we're going to have to go because, listen, there's just not enough professional developers in the world. And then the last piece, as we talked about it, it really is about, it is about embracing the journey, right? It is about continuing to refine your program, continuing to refine your best practices, your leading practices, continuing to adjust the approach, and continue to expand the reach, and learning from that process. Listen, at the same time you're doing all of that, the vendors like ourselves, we're continuing to add new capabilities in the tools to make it easier for you guys to do. So you saw Tom's great demo, very quick demo of App Engine Studio. A lot of what we put into our latest release of App Engine Studio, which came out about 2 weeks ago, is around making governance easier, right? So a key piece of this journey is understanding how the low-code tool that you've chosen, the platform you've chosen, will evolve, right, over time and better support citizen developers. I mentioned Jabil. So Jabil's a great example of a company that very quickly had the need for citizen developers. So their core team of developers could not keep up with the demands of the business. And so what Jabil did is they initiated a citizen development program, and they had it fully going in the span of about six or 7 months, right? They've got, the number's actually a little higher now, but it's 30 plus citizen developers, right? They've saved 4,000 hours of business labor, right, through process automation. They've tripled their development capacity by formalizing the program, by formalizing the training. There's a couple interesting things that Jabil's done, may or may not be right for everybody's citizen development program. So they've created that, the office hours that I mentioned earlier, they actually mandate 75% attendance at office hours. So they basically, if you want to be a citizen developer at Jabil, you are mandated to attend 75% of those office hours, right? They're to some extent forcing community. The second thing that Jabil does, and that they're very proud of, is they do an application review before a citizen-developed application gets moved into production, which is a pretty common practice. But Jabil's done such a good job with their training and enablement and support materials, they get like a 96% first pass rate for citizen-developed applications, which, if you think about it, that's good not only for the citizen developer, but that's good for the core team that supports it as well, because it's less work for them to have to do. They're not going back. The applications are of a higher quality. They're not having to go back and fix applications. One other thing I'll mention that Jabil and some of the other best practices programs use is way up front as part of your intake process, right? When somebody comes to you and says, I want to build an application and it looks like this, it's important to understand who's going to maintain that application once it gets into production, right? Is it going to be the citizen developer? Could be, right? But people leave, right? People move departments, people leave jobs, right? So what we like, the best practice that we offer in that area is that if the application is going to stay within a line of business or department, the line of business or department should ultimately own that application, right? It is their responsibility to maintain it going forward. But at some point in time, that application, if it crosses departmental boundaries, if it becomes more mission critical, you may ultimately end up pulling that application back into a core professional development team. The point is, and this is something that Jabil's wrestling with a bit now, which is, once an application is built, who maintains it going forward? And then a corollary to that is, it's also important to look at your citizen developed applications with some regularity, and are they being used, right? Applications have a life cycle. That's completely normal, right? That means they also have an end of that life cycle. And once an application reaches the end of that life cycle, it's important to be able to see that, understand that, and get that off whatever your low-code platform is. You want to reduce that. There's no need to carry that technical debt forward through upgrades and whatnot. So, and the Jabil, there's actually a publicly available Jabil success story. If you want to learn more about that, you can find that. Go to ServiceNow and just search on Jabil. So how do you get started, right, with a low-code initiative, a citizen development program, right? I think the first thing is identify your digital transformation priorities, which is a very buzzwordy way of saying, what is it you're trying to accomplish as a business, right? What do you believe, or what should a low-code platform and a citizen development platform bring? What value does it bring to the business? And make sure that when you set up the program that you're clear on what that value proposition is. Is it increased application delivery velocity? I'm going to get more applications delivered out in the business. Is it empowering the business? Is it innovating in the business? It can be more than one of those, right? But whatever it is, make sure you've got metrics that measure that, right? So one of the best practices that we've seen is it certainly makes sense to measure the number of citizen developers you have, and you'll hear me quote those all day long from our customers, or the number of custom applications that they built. Again, potentially interesting data, right? But what's a valuable metric is, am I increasing my application velocity, right? Am I reducing my application backlog? Am I, getting more, if you use Agile, am I getting more stories throughput through the process than I was in the past? In other words, am I faster to react to the business? What percentage of my, of my business processes are automated in a given department? My point is, and I've probably belabored it a bit long, is it really is about understanding the business value associated with the digital transformation that low code and a citizen development program can bring for you. The second is, and we've probably said this more than once, right? It is about finding the right low code application platform. We think of ServiceNow, but regardless, right? You need to understand what the platform brings to the table. Is it usable, by a citizen developer as we've defined them? But does it bring the right governance tools, right, and model to the equation? Does it address those pitfalls and those best practices that we just talked about? And then lastly, in terms of formalizing your citizen development program, we've got a bunch of materials, but there's two that I'll offer up here. One is there's a citizen developer workbook, a checklist that will get you, the presentations available to you. You can click on that link. It just basically steps you through in more detail, right, the best practices around establishing a citizen development program. And then the second piece is, if you're interested, if you're not already a ServiceNow customer, if you're interested in learning what it's like to be a citizen developer, we have a citizen developer learning path on one of our developer websites that, at your own pace can take you through and expose you to App Engine Studio, which you saw, and all the really cool stuff that Tom demoed in 2 minutes. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. Cassidy, I think we wanted to take a few questions.
Yes, we do. And it's interesting because to start it off, actually, I'll go right back to this slide quickly. We've gotten more than one question on how can we enable citizen developers and what does ServiceNow offer with that. So as you can see, there is a learning plan and there is like a checklist of things that you should do. Is there anything else? These are two key aspects. Is there anything else you want to call out?
Yeah, absolutely. So on our Now Learning site, which is our training site, there's a citizen developer learning path or plan. I can't remember which one we call it on that site, but the nice thing about if you use Now Learning is there are many certifications that you can earn through the process, right? And the value of that is that gives you sort of that tracking mechanism associated with your citizen developers, right? I want my citizen developers to take these courses, so to speak, this learning plan, this curriculum, and now they have the ability to say to you, look, I earned my citizen developer badge, right? So there's definitely materials on for enablement materials. There's definitely materials on Now Learning. We've got a developer specific site. There are materials on the developer specific site, and then we are in the process of launching. This is probably more late Q4, but we're in the process of launching a community that's specific to folks that are running the citizen development program, but it will have additional enablement materials for the citizen developers.
Great. And this is an interesting question. Do citizen developers typically work on their own, or do they have help from professional developers?
The short answer is it depends, and maybe the better answer is really both, right? So if the citizen developer is automating a process that's pretty straightforward, doesn't require external integrations meaning to other systems in their enterprise, and is contained within their department, many times they work on their own. When they're trying to build more complex processes or consume integrations to other systems within their company or enterprise, they'll tend to work with a professional developer. I mean, one of the powers of low code is a citizen developer and a professional developer can actively collaborate together. It's not like the professional developer goes get some requirements and goes build something, come back. They both can be building into the application. And so, again, to use Gartner's term, those fusion teams are much more meaningful than I'm just going to go get requirements kind of thing and go build it and then come back and show it to you. They both can actively be building.
Great answer. This is also interesting. How do you combat a professional developer team that is terrified of citizen developers?
So this is, to some extent, this is a bit of organizational change management versus anything else. So you get them. The typical things we hear from professional developers is it's just going to be more work for me, right? Because they're not going to get it right. They're going to build that. I'm going to have to go fix their apps. The other thing we'll hear from professional developers is, oh, you can't build a real application, using low code tools, which is not necessarily directly related to citizen developers. I think the reality is you have to show them, right? I mean, you can tell them, and I think if you put the right guardrails and processes in place, that might give them a little bit more of a sense of acceptance. But I think at the end of the day, the only way you do it is you show them. So find that professional developer or developers that get that. Find a citizen developer that gets it, demonstrate success, and then talk about it to the other pro devs.
Okay. I hope that answers somebody's question. And I love that they use the word terrified. That is something that I'm sure you hear.
Actually, Cassie, one other thing on that one. So the other, just thinking about terrified a bit more, the other concern they have is it's going to cost them their jobs. I have yet to see in 50 plus customers a single citizen development program that costs the pro devs their jobs. There's plenty of work to go around. There's always going to be a need for a professional developer. So this is not I'm going to outsource all my pro dev work to folks out in the business. It's just not how this works. Sorry, I wanted to make sure I brought that up too.
Yeah, no, I'm happy you brought that up. Yeah, it's not going to happen. So here's another question. How do you measure the value of a citizen development program?
So I think that comes back to what we talked about maybe a slide ago, which is it's you want to know how many citizen developers, you want to know how many applications are being built, but really what is the business outcome that you're trying to achieve with this program, and make sure that you have metrics in place to do that. So for some customers, speed of development, reducing app backlog is absolutely a business outcome. It is trackable, and that's what they're going to, that's what they maybe initially focus on. It might be, number of processes automated. It might be, as you saw with Jabil and some of the other ones, number of manual hours reduced in the business process, right? It isn't, so there's lots of different metrics you can use, but the key thing is make them business oriented. And if you put them in place, ideally, make them measurable, potentially even within the application that gets built. I have one customer that has built a dashboard. When they release a custom application, they have a premise they start with that this process I'm making this up, used to take 8 hours to do, and now the process takes 2 hours to do. So every time the process is run, they give themselves credit for 6 hours of labor saved. Again, maybe not defensible, maybe defensible, maybe not, but at least they've thought through the process. They've got a metric in place to do that.
Okay, this came up when we mentioned Now in our own citizen development program,
Okay.
But there's a question, do the two of you participate in that program? I can say personally, it is a goal of mine to, by the end of the year, build out an App Engine Studio application. There's quite a few things on my day-to-day position, but again, with this low-code tool, it's pretty easy to. So I don't think that this is going to be a year-long process to build an application. Hence why I'm pretty confident it's going to be done by 2022. But I know we are both very involved in the enablement piece of Now. Is there anything you really want to say else on that, Mark?
No, I love being called out, right? Like, you guys just talk about this for 40-something minutes. Do you actually do it? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And to Cassie's point, in two ways. So I'm actually on the, I forget what we call it, the operating committee for our Now citizen development program, because I have the luxury of being able to work with all these customers and seeing their best practices and what can we bring them internally. But I am also a citizen developer, right? Although my app is not in production yet. We are working on an app right now that is about, it doesn't matter really, but it's about tracking folks that want to present at like our solutions consulting team organizations. And so it's about managing basically an agenda for workshops and things like that. So yes, I am both a citizen developer and on the operating committee of the Now citizen development program.
2 snaps.
There we go.
Yeah. So this one's interesting, and I feel like I can answer it with a yes or no answer, but there's, a question of basically summed up. There's a loose end user development program. Should we skip phases 1 and 2 and directly jump to phase 3 of our suggested model for how to build out a citizen development program? I say no. You can't just skip to phase 3. What do you say, Mark?
I mean, I would say you can potentially quickly get to phase 3, but I don't think you can really skip 1 and 2. There's some foundational elements that not only do you want to get established, but you want to test them on a small, again, maybe I'm overly conservative. 30 years in enterprise IT will do that to you, right? But you want to test them on a small scale, right? You want to get them right. You want to tweak them. You want to learn from that before you go big with a citizen development program. But you could, as Jabil did, right? You can do that relatively quickly. You can potentially do that even quicker than Jabil if you basically have a like kind of model, even if you're not calling it citizen development. We have a like kind of model. You got a lot of these processes, potentially this automation in place with the pro devs. Then it might just be about, let me find a couple citizen developers. Let's try it with them. Let's see what they understand, don't understand, and then you can go big pretty quick. But I do think you need to kind of make sure that you at least address the things that we put in those first 2 phases.
Mm-hmm. I can give a quick answer to this about App Engine Studio. Is it fully available with the Quebec release? Yes. It is available for download with an App Engine license from the ServiceNow store, with more templates with the upcoming Rome release and more features. So definitely it is available, and I hope you're getting App Engine Studio. A few more questions, Mark. Hopefully we can power these out. What are your tips on the best way to intake requests from the business when determining whether they are citizen development eligible?
So I think a couple of things. I mean, honestly, you could use ServiceNow if you're licensed for them. You could use ServiceNow tools and build, a simple intake process. Use Demand Manager if you chose to do that. So I won't try to necessarily solve what tool you use, but it's important to have a tool so you have some tracking. I think the other tip is, again, this keeps coming back to the theme. Like, these are citizen developers, so don't ask them 40 technical questions about their application. They're just not going to know the answer, right? Settle on, I don't know, 5 or 10 basic things that you need to understand about the application to make that initial decision. And then, fairly quickly after they come in, maybe iterate on it a bit more if you need more information. I think that's probably the most important best practice I can share. The types of questions that, folks, aside from what's the app do, who are the users of the app, the other areas that you want to consider is, does the app need to integrate with, other enterprise systems within your business? What's the nature of the data that the app has to consumes or uses, right? So you need to make sure that there are any sort of regulatory or privacy or intellectual property issues associated with it. Again, that doesn't mean it shouldn't be done by a citizen developer. It just means that's just something you need to consider. So I think those are probably off the top of my head, sort of the handful of best practices around the intake process. Oh, one last one. If you reject an application from being citizen developed, it is super important that you explain to the citizen developer why that you rejected it, right? Nothing will kill the program quicker than if stuff just goes into a black hole and nobody responds. Just go back and say, for these reasons, we don't think that's a great fit.
That's such a good point to call out. Last question. We're having so many great questions come in, but I think that this is a good closer. How quickly can I roll out a citizen development program?
Again, it kind of depends on where you're starting from. So I would say if you have a low-code platform in place and you understand that low-code platform by professional developers, and you have, the technical guardrails and some of the processes in place for professional developers, right? And it's really about opening it up to at least that initial group of citizen developers. I think you could potentially do it as fast as 3 months. I think anything less than that is unrealistic today in business, right? If you don't have those things in place, it will take longer. And part of it is like any project, is what kind of resources can you dedicate to getting this thing established, right? To thinking about and building out the model, and what kind of approvals do you need in an organization? So I work with a fair number of financial institutions. They're regulated, they're obviously highly regulated, appropriately so. But when they want to put a program in like this in place, they've got compliance folks, right, and risk folks and legal folks to some extent that they need to go say, is okay what we're doing? So I'd say 3 months on the fast side, but realistically, most of the customers I've worked with have taken longer than that. I've got one that's evolved their program over 4 or 5 years, but they have over 250 citizen developers. Almost every department in their organization has citizen developers. Real citizen, sorry, I don't mean real, but citizen developers that are actively building applications. We have a number of customers that say they have 1,000, but I'm talking actively building applications.
Yeah, that's a good distinction, I think, for us to call out.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, thank you, Mark. I know again, these power questions. Overall, this was a fantastic presentation. I think it's very informative for all the content that we covered in an hour. 2 quick points I want to call out. So the Now at Work 2021 digital experience is coming up, and registration is now open. So in the console, you'll see the link to register. And with this event, you'll really be learning how our Rome Now platform release adds more capabilities to help you thrive in the new world of hybrid work. Additionally, this webinar and all other ServiceNow webinars are available on demand. See this one on replay, and which is again, exciting to announce we're going to have more citizen development webinars, I believe one in November and more in 2022. And we hope you're empowered to get started on your low-code citizen development journey or continue the one that you're already on. And just thank you very much for attending today's webinar. Mark, do you want to say any last closing words?
No, I mean, maybe two things. So one is some of those webinars I believe will be customer-led. Keep me honest there, Cassie. So you don't have to listen to me. You get to listen to a customer that's actually done this. And listen, great questions, right? This is a great questions. Thank you for your time, and feel free to reach out if we can talk to you more about your citizen development program. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.